Magical Boys! They're the worst!
Linnet rounded the corner of the brick building as quickly as she could, and then sprinted down the narrow alleyway. Why did humans have to put their stupid buildings so closely together? Great tension twitched inside her lower back and her thighs. It was fairly dark, as the sun had already set. Shadows saturated the alley like thick webbing. In a panic, she glanced behind her, hoping that they had lost her. Linnet had only turned her attention away for a moment, and then she was twirling over herself, rolling to the ground in a heap. A large black bag of goddess knows what was just sitting right in the middle of the alley, although its hue perfectly blended with the lack of light. An empty dumpster wasn't even 2 feet away from it, too. Damn filthy humans and their disgusting garbage. Linnet slowly got to her feet, and she glanced over herself quickly. Even in the poor light, she saw that she was unharmed, and in fact her attire wasn't scuffed either. She had a full-figured body, and she was a little shorter than most of the Nymphians her age. Linnet had long dark brown hair, a pair of soft gray-blue eyes, long pointed ears, and a wide set of lips that often held wonderful smiles or dreadful scowls. Linnet's attire consisted of a storm gray dress that went to her mid-thigh, a pair of dark blue leggings, and a pair of matching storm gray boots. The telltale sound of other feet running against the pavement sent jolts of anxiety running through her body. They were getting closer.
I think she went this way! Come on, we have to stop her!
Linnet gave out a slight grunt as she started running again. Her lungs heaved inside her chest, and every intake of air sent sharper pains throughout her insides. Running herself into exhaustion was the worst thing that could happen to her, especially considering her special abilities. Of course this would happen to her on her first mission. It was like her great-aunt Tolda used to say, Linnet had the luck of the bog hags. A sudden spark of light flickered on the edge of her perception, and Linnet ducked as quickly as she could. No sooner than she did, a thick and brilliant lightning bolt zipped over her head. The air crackled with thunder, and the lightning bolt collided with one of the brick walls just in front of her. Linnet's knees wobbled as she stared at the spot where the lightning bolt had struck. Massive cracks had been etched into the wall, with chunks of brick laying at its base, where the wall met the pavement. Blackened scorch marks singed the bricks like graffiti. Slowly, Linnet turned back around and gazed at the trio of individuals walking up to her. These 3 were the Magical Boys, the extremely vexing Sparkle Guardians. That was the name that Alfreda had mentioned in passing, playing them off like a minor annoyance. Minor annoyance Linnet's ass. The Sparkle Guardians wore unusual and flamboyant outfits. Had Linnet not been accosted by them, she might have snickered at them a little. These Magical Boys were human, which meant they towered over Linnet. Average Nymphians were only about 4 feet or so in height, and Linnet was 3 feet 10 inches. Each of the Sparkle Guardians had a different color scheme, but their outfits were bedazzled, which made sense when regarding their name. One of the Sparkle Guardians was a larger, brawnier fellow who donned a shiny blue circlet around his forehead. The center of the circlet had a glistening pearl in the middle. He wore a small azure-colored vest, and it looked to be made of fish scales. The man's midriff was exposed, as were his defined 6-pack abs. The man also wore a pair of matching azure slacks that would have been well suited for a stage magician. Even in the poor illumination, his pants glistened with light. The brawny man wore open-toed sandals. He had a shaved head, thin blonde eyebrows, and a pair of piercing green eyes. He wielded a golden trident in one hand, and it leaned against his left shoulder. The second Sparkle Guardian had two dominating colors, dark gold and sunshine yellow. To be honest, Linnet couldn't accurately identify the individual's gender, as they were more feminine with a more lithe body and an easily perceivable sense of grace the other two lacked. However, they didn't carry themselves like other human females, and they dressed androgynously. The yellow-clad guardian wore a golden breastplate with yellow-dyed leather straps, a pair of golden shorts made from scale armor, a pair of lightly glowing yellow greaves, and a pair of sandals. They had wheat golden shoulder-length hair, a pair of hazel eyes, and a determined and confident smile on their face. They also held a sparkling javelin that almost resembled a lightning bolt in their narrow-fingered hands. The last Sparkle Guardian seemed quite odd when compared to the bright colors of the first two. He wore a black leather shirt, a pair of dark gray jeans, and a pair of onyx-colored leather boots. He also wore an obsidian-colored knee-length coat. The boots and the shirt were covered in black sparkling sequins, while the long coat was smooth and seemed to suck in the little light that was in the alley. Most striking was the bronze metal helmet that rested on the man's head. It obscured his hair, but not his striking brown eyes, or his darker-hued skin. There was a visor on the helmet that appeared to have the option of being pulled down over the eyes, but at the moment, the visor ran along the upper part of his skull. The lithe Sparkle Guardian stepped forward and pointed at Linnet.
Stop right there, you dreadful Nymphian! I don't know what you or your companion are trying to do, but we will stop you!
Of course we will! We're the Sparkle Star Guardians! Defenders of justice! Protectors of lovers! Champions of the innocent!
Surrender now! Your ally has left you and there's no way you can fight us all alone.
Linnet took several back steps until the solidness of the brick wall pressed against her shoulders. She was fairly certain that the Sparkle Guardian holding the javelin in the shape of the lightning bolt had been the one to attack her before. But as for the other two, she had no clue what they could do. Why didn't Cyrene tell her about the Sparkle Guardians during Linnet's orientation? Linnet was a brand new employee, and as a Citadel commander, Cyrene was supposed to make sure Linnet had all she needed to be successful. Then again, maybe lack of knowledge could aid her too. After all, these magical boys had never seen her before either. The three of them kept their distance away from her, and they eyed her with constant attention. The blue one had a smug grin on his face, and the trident leaned casually on his shoulder. Damn, it looked awfully sharp. Linnet continued to breathe in and out, and slowly she regained her composure and her breath. The seconds that passed by were more her allies than they were the Sparkle Guardians, and she began to collect magic into her diaphragm. Her lips started to tingle, which was a great sign. She eyed the three of them in turn.
Trying to search for a way out? Don't even think about it. Even if you slipped past us, we're obviously in better shape than you, and you'd be caught.
What a rude thing to say. You humans are quite foul. You don't know anything about me. I've run from you for this long, haven't I? You would do well not to underestimate us Nymphians.
With each intake of air, her body relaxed a little more. More magical energy collected in her lungs and diaphragm.
You must be new around here because we've been fighting and defeating you Nymphians ever since we first sparkled! We know exactly what your kind is capable of. Your evil thirst for the souls of humans encourages us with the holy flame of valiant valor!
They're right. We always win. You're going to fail, just like the many other Nymphians who came before you. It doesn't matter what crazy power you have. We can't be beaten.
This was it. Time for Linnet to act. She licked her lips and then fed the magical streams of power out of her lungs and into her vocal cords. As they vibrated and hummed with arcane energy, a small smile crept on Linnet's face. Despite her grin, a whirlwind danced inside her. This was the real test, to see if she had made the right choice. If Linnet couldn't escape this conflict with some success, then she really had no business being an Anam Energy Operations operative. Linnet stood up straighter. She drew in a deep breath, and she placed her hands at her sides, relaxed and comfortable. She pushed fear, nervousness, and doubt from her mind, and she focused on the collected power in her throat. The Sparkle Guardians hunched down a little, but they didn't advance on her or attack. Maybe they were curious as to what their new foe could do. Linnet wasn't about to complain about this fortuitous turn of events, for they would never happen again. Once she revealed her set of skills, the Sparkle Guardians would surely move swiftly to stop her. That's why this first song had to be a good one. The words dripped past Linnet's lips, and they hovered in the air with incredible crispness and splendor. Each of the magical boys watched Linnet with wide eyes, for the latent effects of Linnet's empowered voice had already started taking effect. When Linnet sang out with her magic, it often charmed those around her to listen with fascinated attention. If her enemies knew what was going on, they would be more likely to resist the trance-like effects longer. But the more they were exposed to Linnet's singing, the more potent the hexing was. And these foolish Sparkle Guardians willingly plunged themselves into her aria. Linnet smiled at them as she continued to sing. She wondered who would be first to fall. It was the muscular one. The man in blue's eyes began to flutter, and he dropped to a knee. With his free hand, he gripped his head, as if that would help.
What's going on? I'm totally wiped out.
It's the singing. Ooh, the Nymphian is affecting us with her voice. We have to...
The black-clad guardian tripped over his feet as he stepped forward, and he hit the pavement. A lightning bolt zapped forward, but Linnet had seen it coming when the yellow guardian reared their arm back. The bolt splattered against the brick wall. Several seconds passed, and the javelin reappeared within the yellow guardian's hand. When they tried to throw another bolt, the javelin crackled with fury. Before they could let it loose, they yawned and closed their eyes. Tired tears squeezed out from their eyelids. Linnet continued to sing, and she took more steps away from the group. The black-garbed Sparkle Guardian tried to push himself up, but a moment later, he crumbled onto the dirty ground. His blue-outfitted companion joined him in sweet slumber moments later. The last to fall to their knees was the Yellow Guardian. They yawned again and watched Linnet with weary eyes.
No fair.
They fell upon their back and started cuddling with the javelin against their chest. Linnet stopped singing and she remained against the wall. All three of them were in a deep magical sleep, and they would remain that way for at least the next hour, or until someone injured them. While the aria of Sweet Dreams was powerful, it had limitations. Linnet didn't have any weapons, otherwise she might have been able to end the reign of the Sparkle Guardians there and then. That would have been another wonderful addition to Linnet's rather short and lackluster orientation. If Alfreda were there, she could have also done the deeds. Linnet was a decent songstress, but not a warrior like other Nymphians. Linnet turned around and ran down the alleyway. She turned another corner and then ran out to the street. Carefully, Linnet peeked about. There weren't any humans in sight. She ran across the street and then in through another alley. Linnet kept making sharp turns, and she always kept looking back behind her. While she was confident in her aria, these Sparkle Guardians were formidable. Linnet finally stopped when she came to a secluded and empty basketball court behind a group of tall brick buildings. Several humans slowly trudged through the alleys, but they weren't close to her, and they weren't even looking in her direction. Linnet took out a small, slender white crystal from the sides of one of her boots. She pulled it out and held it out in front of her. Linnet willed some of her latent magic into the crystal, and it started to shimmer softly.
Alfreda, this is Linnet. Can you hear me?
The crystal hummed silently for only a few seconds.
Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for an hour.
Sorry, I was being chased by those magical boys. I managed to get away.
Oh, well, I'm glad you got away. Where are you? I've had to identify most of the water treatment facilities by myself. No offense, but you were supposed to help me. I guess it isn't your fault, though. It's just bad luck that the Sparkle Dweeps chased you and not me.
Well, my great aunt used to say I had the bog hag's luck.
Great. Now that luck is affecting me. Listen, I'm going to assign your crystal with a tracker. We'll meet at the last water treatment facility and then return back to HQ. Be safe, newbie. Hopefully the rest of this mission goes according to plan.
The crystal shimmered for a moment, and then a small arcane arrow appeared within the crystal. It swiveled around for a moment, and then it pointed to the east. Linnet drew in another deep breath, and then she peered over her shoulder. Everything was quiet and still, and even the random humans had been swallowed up by the shadows. Linnet started running toward the east, always staying in the safety of the alleyways. Within 40 minutes, Linnet had come upon the fenced-in perimeter of one of Duanville's water treatment facilities. It was a large facility with several massive water tanks, a couple of brick-and-mortar buildings, and some kind of treatment pit, isolated all by itself.
There you are. Finally.
Linnet pivoted around, and she beheld the speaker. Alfreda was taller than Linnet by a few inches. She had short, poofy black hair that formed a round circle on her head, and a pair of brown eyes that resembled decadent chocolate candies. Luminescent white freckles covered her face in numerous places. Her skin was darker, the same hue as delicious hot cocoa. She wore a pair of fuchsia-colored slacks, a pair of white high-heeled boots, and a long-sleeved white shirt that glistened with an almost unnatural purity. She also wore a dangling kitty cat earring in her left ear. Several semi-human-sized figures stood around Alfreda, all with unreadable facial expressions. That was, of course, because they were made from clay. The figures had been carved to resemble mighty warriors, complete with detailed armor, weapons, and unique facial features that made them different from one another. Their weapons ranged from swords, to hammers, to axes, and even spears. These terracotta warriors all glanced about in various directions, rather than focus on Linnet or Alfreda. These soldiers had been created from Alfreda's magic.
Are you sure you weren't followed? We can't afford to have the Sparkle Guardians figure out what we're planning. Otherwise, all of this reconnaissance will be for nothing.
It was to my good fortune that the magical boys were foolish enough to let me begin singing. While it did take me a while to get here, unless someone woke them up, they should still be under the effects of my aria of sweet dreams.
Wow. You put them all to sleep? That's impressive. I'm supposing by your tone that you didn't kill them, did you?
Sorry, I didn't. I usually just rely on my voice for doing operative work, and I wasn't given any tools or weapons by Cyrene. In fact, she didn't really give me any information either.
Ugh, that sounds like Cyrene. I suppose it's not your fault then. You're not a combat-type operative, are you?
No, I'm a support-type operative. I focused my songstress magical talents on assisting my allies while hindering my enemies. I don't know any attack songs like my sister, or mind control songs like my mother. I'm sorry.
Hey, it's okay. It takes all types to make a team function well. I'm a frontline combat-type operative because of my soldiers. Had Cyrene done her actual job, then she would have assessed you and given you what you needed. Don't worry about it, okay?
Thank you. Is there anything I can do to help? We're collecting information about the water refining facility, right?
Nope, we're actually done here. I gathered all the necessary intelligence myself, and it didn't take as long as I thought it would. While I infiltrated the facility, I had my soldiers keep watch. There is one task I have for you.
Huh? What would you like me to do?
Alfreda pulled out a squatty round sapphire from one of her pockets. She handed it to Linnet.
This crystal contains all the data and information related to the water treatment facilities, water quality, and size of the tanks. Can you please take this to R&D and return to me once they finish developing the LDAE?
LDAE? What's that?
What do you mean, what's that? Are you telling me that the Citadel commander didn't tell you what our mission actually was?
Oh no, all I was told during my orientation with Miss Cyrene is that I was supposed to help you on your mission, doing whatever you needed. Our entire meeting lasted only about 4 minutes.
That Nymphian. Of course she sent you out here with me unprepared. Listen, Linnet. I don't really have a lot of time to explain the whole scope of the mission right now, but you should have received the mission briefing document before coming out into the field. A little advice? Next time, ask for the mission briefing. Once you get to R&D, ask for Elvinia. She's the arcanist assigned to give us what we need. She'll explain what an LDAE is. As for me, I'm going to proceed with the next phase of the mission. I should be done by the time you return.
What's the next phase of the plan?
Just go! I don't want to risk the Sparkle Guardians seeing us around facilities like this. Before I start with the next phase, I'm going to erase any trace that you were here. Those Sparkle Guardians are powerful, and unless we wipe away all lingering traces of your magical aura, they'll know. I'm not upset at you, okay? I'm just... Between you and I, Cyrene sucks.
Linnet nodded, and she took out the slender white crystal. It was a marvelous artifact that did more than allow for communication between members. It also allowed for teleportation. Linnet fed magic into it, and she thought the command thought phrases to return to the Citadel. Her entire body sparkled with a brief, alabaster brilliance. When the shimmering faded, Linnet wasn't outside the water treatment facility, but was instead inside the Citadel teleportation chamber. She stood on one of the circular platforms in the room. There were 6 other similar platforms, and they each had large cords running from them to a singular terminal where a teleporter console operator sat. The teleporter console operator gave Linnet a nod, and she moved off the teleporter pad, out of the teleportation chamber, and into the Citadel facility. As Linnet walked down the hallway, a small frown creased her face. The walls of the Citadel were smooth and barren, free of decoration or windows. Windows would have been pointless as the Citadel floated within a pocket dimension just outside the actual dimension where they harvested from. Nothing existed out there, except the chromatic expanse of the pocket dimensions, wild to space. Linnet followed the signage that led her to R&D, which meant research and development. This particular citadel was much smaller than most others Linnet had heard about, and it also had a smaller staff. As Linnet walked along, she passed by a few laborers, none of which she had actually come to know yet. They smiled and greeted her nonetheless. She smiled back. The laborers were the individuals who handled the processed Anam energy from the raw sources that operatives like Linnet acquired on missions. Laborers moved the batteries of Anam energy into shipping containers so they could be taken back to the home dimension. It was no small blessing that Linnet had escaped that career track. Even if she had great potential in being a support-type operative, this industry as a whole had a greater preference toward combat and control types. Linnet's older sister Latifah was already legendary as a powerful combat-type operative, and recently she was appointed as a Citadel commander. Her mother Latessa had retired from the field, but in her day, she was one of the most feared control-type operatives. As Linnet graduated from college and started her own career, so many eyes turned to her, waiting to behold how the youngest daughter would prevail in the industry. The pressure was crushing, to say the least. Perhaps that is why Linnet chose to major in Anam Energy Collection in college. She had a legacy to maintain. Latifah was only 4 years older than Linnet, and she was a commander of a citadel 4 times the size of the one where Linnet was stationed. Now that Linnet was actually in the field, that all too familiar specter of doubt kept screaming in Linnet's mind. Had she made the right choice? Was this really the career for her? Was she going on the wrong path and wasting her life? Linnet entered through a set of large double metal doors that had the words Arcane Division painted above them in black lettering. She walked further down the hallway and then came to a large window that peered into a gigantic chamber. The chamber had 3 massive glass cylinder machines spaced out within it. At the tops of the cylinders were series of hoses, tubes, and other components, which were connected to large square machines at the base of the floors against the walls. Within the cylinder tubes flowed unrefined Anam energy. The Anam energy was so bright that it hurt Linnet's eyes if she stared directly into the center of any of the tubes. Towards the bottom of the tubes were various terminals, indicators, and other large tubes that connected to other square machines across the far end of the chamber. Various arcanists walked around the chamber, monitoring the tubes from the terminals or operating the other square machines that transformed the unrefined Anam energy into refined Anam energy. The square machines at the far end of the room were where the massive Anam batteries were powered. For a long moment, Linnet just stared at the chamber, not directly looking into the tubes, but at the same time, not really looking at anything in the chamber either. Was this going to be her life for the next 300 years? Harvesting Anam energy from the human worlds? It wasn't a terrible life, to be sure. Anam energy was vital to the Nymphians' economy and society as a whole. Everything ran on Anam energy. Working in Anam energy could be a fulfilling and worthwhile career. At least, that's what Linnet had been telling herself every morning since she was thrust into this position. She was going to be fine. She was going to be happy when it was all said and done, wasn't she? Linnet shook her head and started moving down the hallway again. She couldn't really afford to be standing around, being lost in her own thoughts like this. Alfreda was waiting on her, and this was her first mission. Linnet had to do a good job. R&D had a separate set of doors located at the very back of the Arcane Division wing. As Linnet entered it, she noticed how small it really was. The entrance to R&D was at the top of a balcony, and a set of stairs led down to R&D's main floor. Linnet gazed down at the floor layout of R&D and beheld 6 noticeable domains created among the cubicle stanchions and glass walls. The head of R&D had an office at the far end of the area. From the looks of it, the head wasn't in her office, and the other 5 researchers were all busy in their own little areas.
Excuse me? Hi! Hey there. I'm a new operations operative, and I'm here to meet with someone named Elvinia?
4 of the other researchers all pointed toward the last one, who simply raised her hand. Elvinia didn't even look up from her work table, and her back was to Linnet. As soon as the other 4 pointed, they went back to their own work. All of the researchers wore the same style of lab coats, which had shooting star patterns streaking across a dark purple background. Linnet descended the stairs and walked through the set of glass hallways that led to Elvinia's zone. Elvinia was hunched over her work table, studying a few large beakers of various colors of liquid. For just a moment, Elvinia stood to her full height as she reviewed the beakers from a different angle. She was about the same height as Linnet, if not taller by an inch or so. Her frame was more on the skinny side. Elvinia had a pixie hairstyle that was dyed mint green. She wore dark brown slacks, a white t-shirt, and the uniformed long multicolored lab coat. Elvinia's nails were painted light blue. Linnet cleared her throat, but Elvinia maintained her attention on the beakers. She adjusted the heat beneath a red vial of liquid and then lowered the heat source beneath the yellow and orange beakers. On the far side of Elvinia's space was a large metal table with several distinct piles of metal, gems, and scrawled parchment. Some of the piles had little artifacts nestled in them, but nothing appeared to be completed yet.
Excuse me? Hi,
Yes, you're the new operative. What is it you want?
Alfreda sent me. She wanted...
Oh, you're here for the LDAE? It's over there on the pink table. That's where I keep all my finished projects.
Linnet glanced around the room, and sure enough, there was a hot pink table resting beside the entrance, just left of where Linnet walked in. The legs of the table had been painted with purple stripes that went all the way from the top of the table legs to the floor. Resting on top of the table was a square metal box with a handle built into the top. A circular metal opening extended from the top of the box, right beside the built-in handle, and it appeared to be an entry for the LDAE. Another small tube was on the side of the box, angled downward. 3 circle glass flasks with glowing purple liquid rested beside the device.
So, that's the LDAE? Huh?
Yes, that's it.
I'm sorry if this is a dumb question, but what is the LDAE? I've never heard of such a thing.
Slowly, Elvinia glanced back to Linnet, and she revealed her eyes. Elvinia had splendid mother-of-pearl irises, which almost looked like a pair of moons. The mint-green-haired arcanist narrowed her eyes a little.
Well, of course you've never heard of it. I had to invent it myself. Didn't you read the mission briefing? I placed all the relevant information in my report to the Citadel commander.
No, I didn't read the mission briefing because I was never shown the mission briefing. My first and only meeting with the Citadel commander lasted only 4 minutes, and then I was just...
Suddenly, Linnet stopped, and then she gazed back toward the other arcanists working in their little sections of the room. None of them appeared to be listening, although Linnet had been speaking loudly. A small smirk appeared under Elvinia's nose, and she stepped away from the trio of beakers that had transfixed her attention moments before.
Oh, don't worry. All walls have been magically enhanced to block all sounds. We could be blowing stuff up in here, and the others would never know. The walls can't be broken either. Wonderful material. Force glass. As for you being out of the loop, I can't say I'm surprised. As far as the Citadel commanders go, our Cyrene is one of the worst you'll ever meet.
Elvinia extended her hand.
Hi there, my name is Elvinia, and this is my domain. What did you say your name was?
Oh, Linnet. My name is Linnet.
Well, welcome to the Citadel, Linnet. To answer your question, an LDAE is an acronym for Lucid Dream Anam Extractor. As for what it does, the flasks beside it need to be poured into the water treatment facility's outgoing water flows, as described in the mission. Well, anyway, the potions will contaminate the water supply, and any humans who drink or bathe in the water will be affected. Now, my dear Linnet, what do you suppose those potions will do to the humans affected?
Based on the name of the artifact, I'm guessing, make the humans have lucid dreams?
Yes, that's exactly right. As you already know, humans naturally make Anam energy, simply by living. Now, there are certain activities that increase the potency of the Anam energy. One of them is through intense dreaming. The more lucid the dreams are, the more powerful the Anam energy is created. What the LDAE does is it acts kind of like a powerful magical vacuum.
Vacuum?
Yep, this artifact is designed to use the unseen threads of reality to draw in and suck Anam energy as it's being pushed out into the surrounding air. It only has a range of 5 square miles, so you will need to relocate after all the Anam energy is collected from a certain area.
Elvinia pointed to the circular opening at the top of the artifact.
The Anam energy flows into the artifact here, and then it goes through a crystallization process.
She pointed toward the little tube on the side.
The LDAE will then take the collected Anam energy and distribute them here in the form of shiny, polished orbs.
Oh, so like magical Anam energy poop.
Yes, like magical Anam energy poop. Oh my gosh. You could expect to harvest 20 to 30 orbs per 5 square miles. Oh wait, do you have an infinity bag? You know what, it doesn't matter, I'll give you one.
Elvinia hummed something to herself as she walked over to a large, fat dresser with 2 columns of 5 drawers. She opened several and then closed them before finding what she was looking for in one of the bottom drawers. Elvinia pulled out a brown canvas bag and handed it to Linnet.
I'm sorry, you said this was a what now?
It's an infinity bag. The name is sorta misleading. It can't contain an infinite amount of space. No one has figured out how to do that yet. Anywho, it's a bag that can hold up to 2 tons of the stuff. It's light as a feather. You can store the Anam orbs in there.
Did you invent this? Just like with the LDAE?
Yes, I did.
Wow, you're so talented.
Thank you. That's nice of you to say.
Oh, you're so welcome. So, I should get going. Alfreda is waiting for me to bring this back.
Okay, but please remind Alfreda that it will take about 3 days for the potion to take effect in human bodies. She'll be able to use the LDAE then. So, have you encountered them yet?
Them? Them who?
No? You know, the Sparkle Guardians. Have you met them yet?
Oh, yeah, them. I met them all right. They had cornered me, but I managed to give them the slip.
They're pretty powerful, right? I know fighting magical girls and magical boys comes with the whole harvesting Anam soul energy from humans gig. But I have to say, these Sparkle Guardians are something else. Not that I've met them or anything.
You sound disappointed. The Sparkle Guardians are the bad guys, at least to us they are. Why do you sound so, enamored by them?
I'm not enamored by them. Okay, maybe I'm a little enamored. Don't tell anyone, okay?
I promise I won't say a word. Your secret is safe with me.
Thank you. You're really nice.
Thank you. You're really nice too. Most everyone I've met have been quite considerate, with the exception of the Sparkle Guardians and our Citadel commander.
Oh yes, Aryn is the worst. Alfreda isn't so bad once you get to know her. If she lets you, that is. She's just super uptight and by the book. Compared to Nixie, sheesh.
Nixie? Who's that? Is she another operative? I haven't been introduced to any of the other operatives aside from Alfreda.
Well, aside from you, Alfreda and Nixie, there aren't any other operatives. I mean, R&D will provide you all with disposable henchmen if you requisition them. But as for actual staff, it's just you three. Heck, you're replacing Kuyo most likely.
Kuyo? Who's that?
Oh. She was an operative, but the Sparkle Guardians killed her.
An icy spasm rippled within her chest. For a long while, Linnet was on a wait list to be placed, and then suddenly, this position opened up and had a short deadline for application.
Oh, dang. I guess you didn't know that. Well, I have to get back to making those, potions. Remember to tell Alfreda that she can use the LDAE in 3 days when she puts the potion into the water supply.
Right. Thanks. And thanks again for making this great artifact.
You're welcome.
Linnet moved over to the LDAE and grabbed it, and the flasks, and then placed them inside the infinity bag. A small smile crept on Elvinia's face when Linnet did, and so Linnet gave her a smile.
By the way, your nail polish is beautiful. What shade is that?
Oh, my nails? Thank you. It's Ocean Paradise.
It goes well with your hair. It was nice meeting you.
You too. Stay safe out there.
Linnet turned around and walked out of R&D. It had been several days since Linnet had returned with the LDAE, and at the moment, she lounged in Mission Headquarters. Mission HQ was a vacant apartment building in the middle of a rougher area of the city. Despite its gruff environment, it was a lively place, with so many types of people. The humans walked to and fro and engaged one another with conversation. Before being employed by the company, Linnet had never seen humans in real life. In fact, this was her first time going to another dimension besides Nymphia. The vacant apartment building HQ had its first floor doors and windows bricked up, so no humans could get inside. It was nice and quiet, isolated from the busy world around it. Once Linnet had returned, Alfreda explained her plan for contaminating the water supply with the special potions. However, rather than act that very night, Alfreda decided that they should wait at least 4 days, in case the Sparkle Guardians were keeping an eye out for the Nymphians. Alfreda revealed that the Sparkle Guardians were very good at always showing up to stop them. How they always knew, she didn't know. And so they waited for days inside their HQ. On the first day, she and Alfreda discussed tactics, the mission briefing, and several contingency plans in case the Sparkle Guardians showed up. Linnet couldn't help but smile during the conversations. Alfreda was so certain and confident. However, when Linnet started asking personal questions, Alfreda deviated away from those topics and eventually ceased the talk altogether. She politely explained that she needed to prepare for the coming days. On the second and third day, Alfreda collected herself in one of the rooms. Linnet managed to peek inside when Alfreda was busy, and she noticed what Alfreda was doing. She had an assortment of tools laid out before her, as well as large blocks of clay. Alfreda sliced off a chunk of clay and then flowed magic into it. The clay clump grew into a much larger portion, and from that portion, she made 4 thick rolls. Alfreda took the tools, and she began carving and detailing the rolls until they were little statues of warriors. She flowed more magic into the clay figure, and they became more solid, as if baked in a kiln. By the 4th day, the day that they were supposed to infiltrate the water treatment facilities, there had to have been 50 or more statues. Alfreda came out for mealtimes, but they still ate in relative silence. During that period of waiting, Linnet practiced her songs of power, warmed up her voice, and sang songs from her youth. Whenever Linnet sang, Alfreda always hovered closer, and she grinned at Linnet. At least Alfreda appreciated music. Linnet also watched the humans from atop her isolated tower. Humans lived such interesting, vibrant, but depressingly short lives. They were all sorts of humans, ranging from children to elderly, who walked the sidewalks and drove the streets. Each of them had stories, lives that had been built by their grit, determination, and, no doubt, were defined by their vocation. Did humans ever question their paths? Surely so. Linnet couldn't be such a unique creature as to be the only one burdened by uncertainty. The infiltration of the water treatment facilities was a success, but one that was undertaken with extreme caution. Alfreda and Linnet snuck into the first one together, and Alfreda took great care to model how Linnet should be doing the next one by herself. It was actually quite easy, as Linnet simply used her aria of sweet dreams. However, this time, she filtered less magic into her voice, and the effects didn't last nearly as long as they probably had with the Sparkle Guardians. She was able to sing a little, and then walk right into the facility. She still avoided the cameras, and stuck to the shadows like Alfreda had shown her. The potions were poured into the outgoing water pipes, and luckily the magical boys didn't show up. As Elvinia had mentioned, the potions were going to take 3 days to take effect, which meant more waiting in the HQ. On the 6th day, Alfreda detailed a plan of Anam energy extraction. They would venture to each of the sites, set up the LDAE, and collect as much Anam energy as they could. On the 7th day, they finally began the last leg of the mission. Linnet, Alfreda, and 4 clay golems moved silently through the alleyways of the city. Their first destination was another vacant house in an upscale suburban neighborhood. The house had a privacy fence surrounding the backyard. Once they got inside, Alfreda had Linnet help her open all of the windows, halfway. One of the golems positioned itself by the front door. 2 had moved to stand by the back door, and the last stood by a wall in one of the empty bedrooms. Alfreda placed the LDAE in the center of the living room.
Are you ready?
Yeah. I have to admit, this is kind of exciting.
Yeah, well, get focused. We need to be prepared. The Sparkle Guardians could arrive at any moment. They have a nasty habit of always foiling our plans.
Wait, they always do? How often do we, win against them?
Alfreda drifted her attention away from Linnet, and then let out an amused grunt. She activated the LDAE a moment later. The LDAE let out a brief humming noise before it got absorbed into the silence of the room. The small opening at the top vibrated for a moment, and then it started making a muted sucking noise. Linnet glanced to Alfreda, who moved over to one of the walls in the house. She sat against the wall and glanced out through one of the windows.
Now we wait. Let's see what R&D gave us.
Linnet sat against the opposite wall, as to not crowd her fellow Nymphian. A solid and silent 10 minutes passed before something actually happened. Bright streams of luminescent green-white energy flowed in through the windows like ethereal wisps. The energy was long and almost looked like magical snakes slithering through the air. Some were larger and fatter than others, but they all flowed into the house through the windows, towards the LDAE. They slipped into the openings of the artifact, and suddenly the LDAE gently vibrated in place. A small palm-sized greenish-white orb rolled out through the tube on the side of the artifact. Then another one rolled out, and then another. Linnet picked one up, and then her eyes opened a little wider.
Oh, wow! It's so warm!
Alfreda moved over to the LDAE, and then she picked up one of the fresh orbs. She held it up to her face and gazed deeply into the center of the orb's bright light.
Huh. I was not expecting this color. I wonder if that is connected to the potency of the Anam energy. Ponderings for another time. Start collecting them as they come out. We need to be ready to move as soon as the site is fully harvested. Also, once the Sparkle Guardians show up, your responsibility is to protect the Infinity Bag at all costs.
Are you sure that they are going to show up?
Yes, they always do. You asked me how many times we win? Well, we don't. There are other dimensions where other citadels are stationed, and sure, sometimes they're able to defeat the local magical girls or boys. But most of the time, we Nymphians get defeated. In the case of this post, we always lose. It's never a matter of winning or defeating them. The real honest-to-goodness objective of the Anam energy harvesting industry is to collect as much as you can before they show up. And they always do.
Wow! I had no idea that's how things really were.
Yeah, well, the corporate recruiters never tell you that. Otherwise, no one would choose this career. It's hard, unforgiving, but it's essential for our people. Anam energy is everything, and someone has to do this. Enough chatter. Collect the orbs and be on the lookout.
Linnet gave off a small sigh, and thankfully Alfreda didn't outwardly react to it. She placed each of the orbs into the sack, and as she did, she considered Alfreda's revelation carefully. Would she have continued to pursue this career track had she known how often operatives got defeated? When Linnet was trying to decide what to do prior to her college graduation, neither her mother or sister mentioned constant defeats. Then again, they were incredible and powerful operatives. Where Linnet could use her power to positively or negatively affect people's minds and bodies, her mother had the power to dominate and command other people's minds. Latifa, her sister, used her magical voice as an offensive weapon and a defensive shield. It was safe to say that Linnet was by far the weakest of her family when ranking songstresses. Then again, could she really compare herself to them? As she had just started her career journey. The only thing her sister and mother said about the job was that it was challenging and rewarding, and it would force Linnet to grow in many unexpected ways. Had Linnet not had famous family members, she might not have been able to gain a full-time operative position right out of college. Other people in her class had junior positions at best, but they were all at larger, perhaps better-funded citadels. Linnet finished collecting the last of the orbs, and Alfreda had Linnet place the LDAE in the bag as well. As swift and silently as mice, Linnet, Alfreda, and the 4 clay golems moved back out through the backyard and out of the neighborhood. The second location had been a familiar one, as they were going to be setting up in the apartment building that had served as their HQ. Linnet placed the LDAE in one of the apartment spaces, but before she could turn it on, Alfreda held up a hand.
Before you do that, let me beef up our security. This is where it starts to get serious.
Alfreda reached into her own infinity bag, and she started placing statues in rows of 8. Once she had placed exactly 16 of them, she stepped back. She gestured to Linnet to step back, and so she did. Alfreda raised her hands, and her eyes began glowing with an amber hue. Her hands became bathed in the same light seconds later. Each of the statues started glowing, and then they grew to full human-sized golems. Once all 16 were large, the other 4 fell in line to make an even 20.
All right, 5 of you remain on this floor. The rest of you need to split up evenly on each of the floors below, with the odd one left over going to the first floor. Fight anyone who tries to get in. Got it?
The 20 golems all nodded and then silently left the room that Alfreda and Linnet stood in.
You have such interesting magic. I wish my magic was as useful as yours.
I'm sure you're more powerful than you're giving yourself credit for. I mean, you put the Sparkle Guardians to sleep once. I've heard of your mother and your sister. Your mother dominates minds and your sister sonically destroys things. Can you do anything else other than make people sleepy?
Yes, I can. For allies, I can make them stronger, go faster, and fight better. I can even heal them if they're hurt. For enemies, I can afflict them with status effects like drowsiness, sleep, slow them, paralysis, and even make them see hallucinations. I can't do damage with my voice, nor can I dominate people's minds. Although I do have some limited charming skills, but that's just to draw people in.
Alfreda gave a brief nod, and then she approached Linnet. She placed a hand on Linnet's shoulder, and then gave a firm squeeze.
Listen, now isn't the time to be doubting yourself. Yes, you're not quite like the others in your family, but you have your own strengths and skills. We just have to figure out what they are. Once we get through this in one piece, I'll help you figure out how to use your magic more strategically. Wait, could you have affected my golems?
Oh no, I can only affect living things.
Ah, well, that makes sense. Fair enough. I'm going to start the LDAE. If the Sparkle Guardians show up here, I want you to stay behind me and try your best to affect them for as long as possible. It may give my golems a better chance, and we can slip away.
If they catch us here, are we going to try and go elsewhere to collect more Anam?
No. Once they find us, they'll be chasing us like dogs on the hunt. You saw how long it takes for the LDAE to start gathering Anam energy. If we tried to collect elsewhere, they would just be on us again before we collected any substantial amount. It wouldn't be worth the risk of losing either of us to them. Recklessness like that leads to getting someone killed. I mean, I'd be okay, I'm sure. But you just got here. We can't afford losing you already.
Wow, you're really kind. The Citadel commander wasn't supportive like you are. In fact, during our brief meeting, she made me feel like I was inconveniencing her by starting with you all.
Cyrene is the worst commander ever. Citadel commanders aren't supposed to be like her, so don't let that cow affect how you see them. Some of them, and those who aspire to be them one day, actually care. I'm starting the LDAE. Be ready for something to happen.
Do you think something might happen?
Yes. If I was a betting Nymphian, I'd say that during our first round of extraction, the Sparkle Guardians felt it. If we manage to actually get through this round, they will most likely find us on our 3rd attempt at the very latest. Even though they're human, they can feel the Anam energy in the air. I'm not certain if they can see it, but they always seem to sense whenever we try and hatch our plots and schemes.
Alfreda activated the LDAE, and she sat against the wall, just like she did in the previous vacant house. However, she pulled out another row of 8 statues and placed them before her. Linnet sat against the same wall as Alfreda, although she was about 10 feet away. The LDAE made several sucking noises, and like before, it was about 10 minutes before streams of Anam energy flowed in through the windows. Just as before, the Anam energy flowed into the artifact, and then it created smaller orbs for Linnet to collect. She had managed to collect about 15 orbs when a loud crash vibrated on the air. The entire building shook.
Ah! What was that?
You have 3 guesses, and each of them sparkle.
Alfreda hopped to her feet and began transforming the statues into golems.
Quick, stop the LDAE and then put it and the orbs in your bag.
Another crash resounded, and the building shook once more. Linnet stopped the LDAE and then tossed it in her bag along with the rest of the orbs. The newly created 8 golems formed a ring around Linnet and Alfreda. The sound of someone laughing echoed through the floors, followed by a loud crack. Suddenly, a thick stream of water burst up through the floors in the hallway, just outside the living room. The streams collided with the ceiling and then pushed past it, creating another hole in the top. At first, there was only a hole large enough for the stream to pass through, but the stream moved and edged the hole larger. Soon a gaping circle was bored into the floor. A moment later, the yellow and blue Sparkle Guardians leapt up through the hole, and then entered the living room.
Your clay soldiers never stop us! What makes you think this time will be any different?
Ha 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 ha! Your little minions are weak! I broke off more of a sweat jumping through the hole than I did breaking your little friends.
Sparkle Guardians. I swear that on... Wait. Where's the black one?
Right behind you!
The Sparkle Guardian with the long black coat appeared behind Alfreda. As one of his arms wrapped around Alfreda's neck in a kind of wrestling chokehold, the other hand lifted the visor from over his eyes. Linnet stepped back and gazed in horror as her partner struggled to breathe and get free.
Hey, it's that new Nymphian, the one who put us to sleep.
All 3 Sparkle Guardians locked their attention on her.
Run! Get away!
The yellow Sparkle Guardian raised their javelin and it started crackling with electricity. They threw it at Linnet, and she narrowly missed getting struck with it. The static aura from its power tickled her skin, and her arm hairs bristled with life. When the javelin struck the wall behind her, the javelin exploded in a brilliant flash. The wall crumbled where the bolt had struck, and a new hole in the wall allowed for a breeze to pass through. Within seconds, the javelin appeared in the Guardian's hands. The blue Guardian leveled his trident in front of him, with its tips pointing toward Linnet.
Don't even try singing again. Running away is the
Alfreda's eyes glowed with an amber hue. All at once, the surrounding 8 clay golem soldiers charged the Sparkle Guardians with their weapons. 6 of them advanced on the yellow and blue ones, while the last 2 pivoted to face the black one. The Black Guardian tightened his grip on Alfreda's throat, and she gagged loudly.
Go! I'll hold them off!
Linnet clenched her fists as she peeked at the 2 Sparkle Guardians doing battle with the clay soldiers. The other 5 soldiers, who had been on the same floor, also charged into the room, and they surrounded the pair. Unfortunately, the Sparkle Guardians were every bit as powerful as Alfreda and Elvinia had suggested. The Yellow Guardian bobbed and weaved, and they jabbed their javelin into soldiers' chests and stomachs. When the opportunity presented itself, the yellow one tossed the lightning bolt at one of the more distant golems. When the bolt struck, the golem exploded into sprays of sharp shrapnel. The Blue Guardian was the more fierce of the fighters, though. He expertly spun his trident into golems, and they shattered around him. A massive spout of pressurized water sprayed out through the tip of his trident, and it broke through several of the clay golems. Linnet placed her back against the wall. She stood up straight, and she began to sing. The air rippled with power as Linnet's spell song started to saturate the space within the apartment. The Sparkle Guardians winced with aggravation, and both the yellow and blue kept trying to move toward her, but they were blocked by the soldiers. Ever so noticeably, their movements were jerky, and their reactions were off. As Linnet continued to sing, the magical boys kept getting struck. The Yellow Guardian missed their javelin throw, and it missed Linnet by a larger margin. The blue one got punched in the jaw by one of the few remaining clay golems. Linnet continued to sing, but she ran toward the black-clad guardian. Her breath started to waver, but Linnet continued to maintain her splendid and debilitating tune. She dove for the guardian and slammed her shoulder into his knee. Pain erupts through Linnet's senses, and yet she still sang out. The blow knocked both the guardian and Alfreda to the ground. Alfreda managed to wiggle free a moment later. As soon as she was clear, the two clay golems dogpiled onto the guardian.
Keep it up!
Alfreda set her bag on the floor, and then she dumped out the rest of her statues. Linnet pushed Alfreda out of the way at the last moment, and then fell back as another lightning bolt zapped between them. Alfreda used her magic, and dozens of clay golems rose from the ground, fully formed and ready to brawl. They all rushed to the three guardians, while Alfreda grabbed Linnet's hand. Together, they ran from the apartment, down the hall and down the stairs. They managed to get to the first floor and exited through the massive crater in the brick wall, where the Sparkle Guardians came in through. Linnet and Alfreda sprinted down the alleyways and took every twist and turn they came across. After 10 minutes or so, Alfreda stopped and pointed to an open dumpster.
There! Quick!
Linnet jumped in first, right on top of wet garbage bags. She nearly gagged, but Alfreda landed beside her and then closed the lid on top of them. Alfreda laid back on the trash and then held her index finger over her lips. Within minutes, the sound of someone running past them thundered throughout the closed space of the dumpster.
They can't get away! Come on!
Alfreda and Linnet laid there for another 10 minutes before Alfreda pulled out her teleportation crystal.
You should have run. But thank you.
You're welcome!
Alfreda grabbed Linnet's hand, and the power of the crystal started to activate.
They're in that dumpster! Quick!
By the time that one of the Sparkle Guardians flipped open the dumpster lid, the magic brilliance had already consumed both Linnet and Alfreda.